to the republic for which one nation indivisible.
Yeah. Oh, line is on. Roll call.
Yes. Good morning. Mr. Cannon.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Moss.
Here.
Mr. Herzog.
Here.
Mr. Sevison.
Present.
Mr. Hauge.
Here.
Thank you.
Next is report from the planning director.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the Commission. For the record, E.J. Valdi with the Planning Services Division. You should all have a copy of this flyer that I gave you. That's the announcement for the Kings Beach Lakeside Redevelopment Project Community Meeting. If you remember, July 25th, you continued that item so the applicant could get together with the public, hold a community meeting, gather more input on the project. So that meeting is set. That's going to be run by held by the applicant. It's Tuesday, January 28th at 5:30 p.m. and that's at the Kings Beach Event Center. So if anybody's interested in going that, let us know just so we can keep track of numbers of commissioners attending, just so we don't have any issue there. And then the plan is once we have that meeting, we'll come back to the commission, hold another workshop with the commission to discuss the outcome of that meeting, also probably provide another opportunity for discussion or public input. And then after that, we'll have to come back to the commissions for your commission to make a decision on that matter. So that's kind of the course of action we're going to take on that. Any questions?
Sounds like
Yes,
a good
sir.
plan.
Does that work?
Well, I think it's a good way to go. Yeah.
I do too.
I think it'll help make things understandable. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that'll work too. Mr. Herzog.
Can that be streamed here from this location, or do we?
I don't
need to
think
be-
the community workshop that's already set up, I think that's completely done by the applicant, so we don't have that capability. We're going to have planning staff there, obviously, so we can hear what's said at that meeting. We'll report back on that meeting during the workshop, and hopefully have a full discussion at that time.
I like to go if I can. I might have trouble getting there by 5:30.
And I'm not sure what the weather looks like. I know there's a storm coming in over the weekend too, so for anybody down in the valley, it might be more difficult to get up there, unless it all clears out by Tuesday. So,
yeah, one of the things that I remember was there was kind of a mystery around the bigger picture associated with this project and the community's vision of the bigger picture versus a project.
when you talk about the bigger picture,
Well, there's talk about a hotel someplace and some other things that people were expecting to be in Kings Beach, and that seemed to be missing in the discussion we were talking about. That's just a comment that I remember from it. At some point in time, probably.
Yeah, and originally, I mean, the project, it was the Lakeside property and the Mountainside property, and then what ultimately came to your commission was just the Lakeside portion of that project.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big part of the discussion.
I think one of the problems is too that I think TRPA has that property zoned one way and the developer had to conform to that. So then everybody was disappointed to realize that that's all that was provided for in the basin plan. I think that was a problem that needed to be addressed publicly.
Okay.
EJ, will you say one more time the date of that workshop and time?
So next Tuesday, January 28th at 5:30 p.m. and that's at the Kings Beach Event Center, the same place where we hold our planning commission meetings in Tahoe. And then I would hope to get back to the commission, sometime shortly after that.
He's got one.
You had one.
Okay. Any more questions on that item? All right, so the only other thing, upcoming planning commission meetings, February 13th. We hope to have the winery and farm brewery ordinance on that agenda. Also, Mason Trails, which is subdivision out in the Rio Vineyards area. And then we will have a meeting on February 27th. That's the agenda is to be determined on that, though. That's all I have.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Now's the time on the agenda for public comment. Those persons wanting to speak to the commission on items not on the agenda. Seeing none, consent agenda. So question, it says consent agenda here in the agenda, but then it comes later in the agenda. So is it appropriate to take action now or later in the meeting?
Right. Now is normally the time we do the consent agenda.
Okay.
You would first ask any of the commissioners if they want to pull anything off consent, then open it to the public.
Is there any items the commission wants to pull from the consent agenda?
Chairman, I'd like the motion that we approve the consent agenda item.
Or the public?
Anyone in the public who would like to remove an item from the consent item agenda? Okay. Mr. Nash.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
I have a first by Mr. Herzog, a second by Mr. Moss. So a vote for Mr. Cannon, please.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Herzog?
Yes.
Mr. Sevison? Mr. Hauge?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we're beyond 10:05, so the item now is the Douglas Office Park, also known as the Barton Business Park Subdivision Modification, Category Exemption. Looks like we have Christopher.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Chris Schmidt with the Planning Services Division. Before you today is a request to modify a subdivision located in the Granite Bay area. It's the Barton Road Business Park, also known as the Douglas Office Park. It's located on the northwest corner of Douglas Boulevard and Barton Road. The action today is to allow subdivision of the last vacant parcel in the business park. And that parcel is located at 5940 Granite Lakes Drive, a 0.69 acre parcel that fronts Douglas Boulevard and also Granite Lake Drive. Zoning in this area is office professional, use permit required, density limitation of 0, and design scenic corridor. So that's most of the properties on Douglas. Surrounding properties are residential single family to the north and to the west, and then residential agriculture to the south. Those parcels on the south are vacant. A few pictures of the project site. You can see not much habitat besides the frontage landscaping. This is internal to the site. There is improvement on the property. It's a shared parking area that all the office buildings within the park utilize. So the entitlement is a subdivision modification to allow parcel splits within the business park. A little bit of history. Barton Business Park was approved in December 1986 to split the property for individual for sale lots. A conditional use permit for the Douglas Office Park was approved in July 2000, and it laid out a development plan for the project. It developed pretty much to what is shown here, except the two buildings were combined into one larger building in the northwest corner of the project site. And you can see there was a large building anticipated for vacant or lot number 9, the subject of this lot split. Parcel 9 was envisioned to be developed with a 10,000 square foot building, and the lot was 34,000 square feet. The proposal today is to split that parcel to allow 2 separate buildings. When the park was originally developed, there were conditions that said no lot should be further divided. So the modification is to delete 18L, condition 18L, that talks about no lot being further divided except as a condominium ownership subdivision. So that's where an individual building would be condoized and individual suites would be separately owned. And then condition of approval 36 also talked about no lot can be further divided. So the applicant is asking to remove that restriction. And here's a site plan of parcel A and parcel B. This is very schematic. The office park owner does have a tenant that's interested in building on parcel A, looking at about a 5,200 square foot single story building. If the commission approves the subdivision modification, the applicant would have to come in for a minor land division to split the parcel, and then it would go into design review for the actual construction of that building. So the building design is controlled by the conditional use permit for Barton Business Park, where development standards were set, and also set the architecture for all the buildings in the park. So the new building would conform to those guidelines. And here's what the existing buildings look like. There is enough parking on the project site to allow for the split. There's actually going to be a reduction in the anticipated square footage of the office park, so there's adequate parking. We did look at traffic internally. 5,200 square foot office building would be expected to generate 57 trips per day, 8 in the AM and 8 in the PM peak hours. Just for reference, Douglas Boulevard handles 42,800 vehicles per day at Douglas and Barton Road. So with that, staff recommends the commission find the subdivision modification categorically exempt from environmental review pursuant to provisions of section 15305 of CEQA and section 1836070 of the Placer County Environmental Review Ordinance, which deals with minor alterations and land use limitations. Then also approve the Barton Business Park subdivision modification to allow subdivision of parcels within the business park, supported by the findings and conditions of approval contained in the staff report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does the commission have
If I
questions?
may, please.
Yep.
The condition on here that no lot shall be further divided, if I remember correctly, that's pretty much a boilerplate condition that goes in every subdivision.
It is, and we've been trying to get away from that. I think it's most of the older projects have that in there.
But there was never any specific reason why there would have been an objection to splitting this up, other than that once a map's put on, part of the standard list of conditions that gets thrown on it is we're not splitting them up anymore.
It's that, and I think it's to avoid conflict with state subdivision law, so that you don't just split and then come later and then want to do a series of more splits.
4x4ing or whatever, yeah.
But this was a major subdivision to begin with, so I'm not sure why that condition was ever placed in there.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, so it's probably impractical, not practical, but if that goes out, then for parcel B, if somebody wanted to split that into a couple small buildings, that would require them to come back in and get approval, or what?
Not from the commission, be another minor land division, but there is a standard in the guidelines, and I forget what the number is, but the minimum lot width, I believe, is 75 feet. So I don't know if that parcel B could be further split. So I think this would be it as far as lot splits in that project.
Okay, so that is really a superfluous provision that's being taken out.
Yeah, so this would be the last time that we come to the commission for further splits, because this removes that condition. Otherwise, then it's a parcel review committee would be reviewing those.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. At this time, does the applicant have comments? If not, open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the public who has comments? If not, we'll close it to the public and bring it back to the commission for a recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, we're ready. I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Motion that we find the subdivision modification is categorically exempt from environmental review pursuant to the provisions of section 15305 of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines and section 18.36.070 of the Placer County Environmental Review Ordinance. Minor alterations and land use limitations. Are we doing these together, or should we separate them up?
It's probably better to do them separate.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Roll call.
I have a first by Mr. Moss, a second by Mr. Cannon. So a vote from Mr. Cannon, please.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Herzog?
Yes.
Mr. Sevison? Mr. Hauge?
Yes.
Thank you.
All
Mr.
right.
Chairman, I would further move that we approve the Barton Business Park subdivision modification SUB-152, to allow subdivision of parcels within the business park supported by the findings and conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Second.
We have a first and a second.
I have a first from Mr. Moss, a second by Mr. Cannon, so a vote from Mr. Cannon, please.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Herzog?
Yes.
Mr. Sevison?
Yes.
Mr. Hauge?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. We're after 10:15, so next item on the agenda is the Granite Bay Estates Gated Entry Conditional Use Permit Modification Categorical Exemption.
You're right on time.
That's good. Right. Amy?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm Amy Rossing with the Planning Services Division. Item before you this morning is a conditional use permit modification to add a gated entry to the Granite Bay Estates Mobile Home Park. The Granite Bay Estates Mobile Home Park is located on the north side of Douglas Boulevard. It's about 1,000 feet west of the intersection of Douglas Boulevard and Auburn Folsom Road. To the east of the community is the Raleigh Shopping Center, and then surrounding it is a number of residential developments to the north, south, and west. The project site was first developed in 1958 as a 72-unit mobile home park. Updates have occurred in 1963, 1981, and 1993 to increase the number of units. The last update in 1993 was to add 8 additional units to the mobile home park in the front, along closest to Douglas Boulevard. However, those units were never added. So the closest unit today now sits 175 feet back from Douglas Boulevard, and the total number of units is 100. During that time when all these updates occurred, at no point in time was a condition added to add a gate. So that's the purpose of our hearing today. So the applicant is applying to install a 52-foot wide gate. It's going to have 2 pedestrian gates on either end. Both of those gates will be 4 feet wide. It'll have 2 gates for vehicles to access, one for entering, one for exiting, and those gates will be 16 feet wide. The overall height of the gate is going to be about 8 feet. And the gate is going to be located 133 feet back from Douglas Boulevard. There's going to be an island keypad that's going to be 30 feet away from the gate. And this is also going to include a 30-foot turnaround. So if somebody gets to the island keypad and isn't able to get in, they have access to turn around in front of the gate. So the project site's located in the Granite Bay Community Plan. In the Granite Bay Community Plan, in the circulation section, there is a policy number 28 that says that gates shall only be allowed under certain circumstances. So these circumstances, there are 3 of them that we could choose from. So the first one is instances where the entrance is located next to a substantial generator and it's creating a parking issue. The second one is instances where the entrance is contiguous to like a business park and putting in a gate is the most practical solution to separate the 2 uses. Or if the community is located near a major or off of a major roadway. So in this case, Douglas Boulevard is considered a major roadway in the community plan. So in the circulation section, it continues to say, even if you can check one of the boxes in policy 28, in policy 29, there's a list of further requirements. So that includes like the gate's function. So like you want to ensure that the gate's not creating some sort of hindrance for like a non-motorized walkway. So like this gate that they're proposing will have a pedestrian gate. So that way the residents can walk from their community over to like the Raleigh Shopping Center, businesses nearby. It also talks about construction. So that turnaround access is required. Engineering surveying has already reviewed the preliminary turnaround for that. We're also requiring improvement plans as part of the conditions to ensure that that turnaround is constructed to our standards. It also talks about material and design. So for instance, like wrought iron, wood, or natural stone are some of the key materials that are required. In this case, the applicants are going to propose a wrought iron gate. And then there's also going to be a fence that will be installed at the perimeter of the gate, and that will also be wrought iron. So based on staff's full analysis with the community plan, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve the request to modify the use permit So the first recommendation is to find that the project's categorically exempt from the environmental review pursuant to Section 15303 of the California Environmental Quality Act and Section 1836050 of the Placer County Environmental Review Ordinance. And then the second recommendation would be to approve the modification to the conditional use permit to allow the construction of a gate at the entrance of the Granite Bay Estates Mobile Home Park. I'm available if you have any questions, happy to answer them. I also have the project applicant here as well.
Commission, do you have questions of?
Is there a EVA gate?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is there an EVA associated with this, just one way in, one way out?
One way in, one way out. Yeah, as far as I know, there is an EVA access point. But can I add on to that? So the applicant is providing or has been working with the fire department, and so there will be like a strobe light that will be added onto this gate. So the strobe light will sense if like the lights are on in it, and on like an ambulance or a fire truck or something like that, and the gate will automatically open, and it'll stay open for 15 minutes.
So a strobe, you say a strobe light? I don't know.
It's like a strobe light sensor.
Like an Opticom?
Oh, sensor.
Yeah. And there's a specific brand that the fire department requires that matches the equipment on their fire trucks.
Okay, and then if you have 100 units behind the gate, and so if there's some kind of an incident in the park that requires evacuation, is there a plan?
I believe that was when the gate would probably open automatically and stay open.
You wouldn't have a strobe light necessarily.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily have the strobe light on the exit of it. That's a good point.
Just a real quick question for ESD. Is it a breakaway from the inside, Mr. Franz?
I have not reviewed the actual design of the gate at this point.
Okay.
Well, we can answer.
Okay,
I mean,
we can
the
get
owners
back
can
to
answer
that,
that
yeah.
question if they have an answer.
Well, I can speak to that. I know as a longtime former HOA president of my association, and we put gates in. I reviewed this. Those are standard in Placer County, that those kinds of redundancies are already county compliant and city compliant. So the knock boxes, those strobe lights that you're talking about, there are also redundancies as far as key systems. And in a real emergency, if someone doesn't come out and automatically release the gate, the fire or police departments or sheriff's office they'll remove the gate with a vehicle. So this shouldn't be a concern for the commission.
Okay, well, I'm thinking, well, we'll talk about it later.
Mr. Nash? Moss, sorry.
Question, did this go to the Granite Bay MAC?
No, it did not.
It did not. Just because of timing issue, or?
So items that go to the Granite Bay MAC are subdivision modifications are not subject to the MAC.
Okay.
So that's the only reason it did not go to the MAC.
Okay. And then
Or use permit modifications, I should say.
the 30-foot turnaround, I'm assuming that's adequate to turn around both a vehicle and a vehicle with a trailer?
I'll try to address that. I don't know about the trailer. I mean, this is our standard turnaround that the county has, our standard plate that would be typical for vehicles. But if you're towing something, I'd have to put a template on that to see if that would.
I would think if with all the room that is there to be able to accommodate somebody pulling off with a vehicle and a trailer, which is very likely on Douglas Boulevard, that accommodating their ability to get out without jamming up that entry would be desirable.
It's generally as big as our standard cul-de-sac. So
Okay,
if you can kind of pull a trailer around the cul-de-sac, then you should be able to do that here as well. It may require some maneuvering because if you pull up next to the keypad, you're not going to quite have the radius that you have. But if you were to back up slightly, then you could get around that area.
You have to go really fast.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of staff? Thank you. All right, applicant, if you'd like to make a statement. No. I believe there were questions for the applicant, so.
The question about the ability for vehicles to turn around, number one, the fire department was the number one consideration, and they saw it was actually enough turnaround area without what we are adding. And it's not a 30-foot, it's a 30-foot radius. It's a 60-foot turnaround, which will more than accommodate the biggest fire truck made and vehicle with a trailer. Any other questions?
Any other
Could you
questions
just
of the
state your
applicant?
name for the record, please?
Sorry?
Could you put your name on for the record? Could you state your name for the record?
My name's Gary Brown. I'm the managing member of the LLC that owns the Granite Bay Estates Mobile Home Park. I have been for over 20 years, and this is seen as a great addition to the community for the safety and security of the residents, and that's why we started it. And as everybody knows, the homeless issues are all over California, and even though Granite Bay is a very nice community, there's one of the major reasons for this is the safety and security of the residents, because we even have homeless hanging out at the Rayleigh Center, and we don't like to have them walking through the park and helping themselves to private property. So it was a safety issue, and we have no objections. The residents are very happy about it. Any other questions?
I have a couple questions.
Pardon me?
I have a couple questions. The pedestrian gates, those are unlocked?
The gates locked?
You have pedestrian gates on either side?
All the
those
gates
are open for the residents to come and go as they desire?
Yes, it'll be open during the business hours and the commute hours, like going to the store. It locks at night.
So the pedestrian gates will be locked at night? Okay.
Yes, they'll be locked, but the residents can get in and out. We're going to have clickers for all the residents to use, and in their vehicles, they can get in and out at any time.
Here's the other question I have is, I kind of already asked it, but do you have an evacuation plan?
Yeah, well, specifically, no. Oh, wait a minute.
Can I speak? I know.
He's my supervisor. He's been with
Ron
me.
Richards, I'm his supervisor. They're actually, one of the requirements.
You have to give your name and talk to the microphone.
My name is Ron Richards, and I'm a proper supervisor for him. Part of the operations permit for a mobile home park, it requires a emergency plan, which you weren't aware of, but we do have emergency plan.
That's right.
And as far as the operations of the gate, the exit gates do not require anything from the residents. Pedestrians there's a panic bar; they can walk right out at any time. And as far as exits of cars, if the power goes out, the gates have battery backups that automatically open. And if the power's on and a car comes to the gates automatically open. They don't have to have a remote. You don't have to have anything. So in the case of the power's out, the gates are open. In the case of the power's on and there's an emergency, anybody that's exiting in a car, the gates are going to open for them. There's no remote required to exit the park.
And so that the gate, if you have a mass exodus,
sure,
the gate will stay open, you're saying?
The gate would stay open. So every time the gate opens, there's a hold open. So the gates don't close right away. There's a slight delay. If another car came behind them, they would
stay open,
go right through. Matter of fact, that's one of the downfalls on the entrance is also a hold open. So sometimes, if you lived in a gated neighborhood, sometimes somebody will pull up behind you and follow through. Mm-hmm. That's going to happen. And every time another car goes through, the gate has that same hold open. So that if a car goes through, the gate holds open, and then another car goes through, then it has the same delay. So that gate could stay open for 100 cars before it closes again. And like I said, in the case of emergency where the power's out, the gates are going to open anyway because they're battery backup. Both gates would open in that case. So that if the fire department came through and there's power outage, the gates would be open automatically.
Where if people needed to evacuate,
Sure.
they'd be open.
And our emergency plan for the park actually shows the evacuation route. The park, it all funnels out to Douglas Boulevard. There are no exits.
It's the only exit to and
So-
from the park.
Yeah. So it's an ideal place for a gated system because you don't have multiple gates that, everybody can be controlled access to one place. And another thing that I wanted to say as far as the entrance gates, so any resident exiting the gate at any time can push the panic bar to a pedestrian can walk out. To enter, they have, it has actually a combination that you punch the combination in, and it's a mechanical, so there's no worry about it, battery failure. It's a mechanical lock that you push the button and you could walk in.
That's on the pedestrian gate.
On the pedestrian gate.
So if somebody at nighttime is walking home, they have a way to get in. Yeah.
They would just put in. And there's also lighting there at the entrance. I don't know if the pictures came out, but there is lighting so that it's not like they're going to be fumbling in the dark to get into the gates.
Okay. Well, it sounds like now you actually have an evacuation plan already that is mandated by the state.
Required by law.
Yeah.
Okay.
I forgot to mention that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. We find the project categorically exempt from environmental review pursuant to the provisions of Section 15303E of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines and Section 18.36.050E of Placer County Environmental Review Ordinance.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Roll call.
First by Mr. Moss, a second by Mr. Cannon. A vote from Mr. Cannon, please.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Herzog?
Yes.
Mr. Sevison?
Yes.
Mr. Hauge?
Yes.
Thank you.
Chairman further move that we approve a modification to conditional use permit LD-225 to allow the construction of a gate at the entrance of Granite Bay Estates Mobile Home Park based on the findings and modified conditions of approval contained in the staff report.
Second.
We have a first and a second.
First by Mr. Moss, a second by Mr. Cannon. A vote from Mr. Cannon, please.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Herzog?
Yes.
Mr. Sevison?
Yes.
Mr. Hauge?
Yes.
Thank you.
With that, I believe we are concluding the business and the meeting is adjourned. Oh, is that appealable, Clayton? Oh, okay. So if it is, then we need to announce that if anyone wants to appeal the decision, there is a fee of $619. How many days? 10 days to appeal. Okay. Thank you. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting.